Good day. I am Jonason Jeff T. Factora, a student of the University of the Philippines Open University under the P299 Research Methods in Planning course. Today, I will be presenting my research proposal titled Integrating Climate Resilient Agriculture into the Agriculture Sector Development Plan of Cagayan Valley, a strategic framework for sustainability. So this is my cover page with my student number 2024-30591 under the Faculty of Management and Development Studies, enrolled at Diploma in Land Use Planning at UPOU. This is my outline or table of contents that has 4 parts: the introduction, the review of related literature, research design, and references. And my presentation covers 22 slides. Let's go into the details of the introduction. Cagayan Valley, known as the rice and corn granary of the Philippines, or Cagayan Valley, plays a pivotal role in the nation's food security. The region's economy is predominantly agriculture-based, with a significant portion of the population engaged in farming activities. Cagayan Valley is increasingly vulnerable to climate-induced hazards such as typhoons, droughts, and floods. These events have led to substantial agricultural losses, threatening livelihoods and regional food production. And farmers have observed decreased water availability and rising temperatures, impacting crop yields and farming practices. The main research question is, how can climate-resilient agricultural interventions be effectively integrated into the Agriculture Sector Development Plan, or ASDP, in Cagayan Valley to enhance agricultural resilience and sustainability? And with this main research question are 4 sub-questions. Number 1 is, what existing policies and programs supports climate-resilient agriculture in Cagayan Valley? Then number 2, what are the key barriers and enablers for CRA adoption among farmers and agricultural institutions? Then number 3, how can institutional coordination and governance mechanisms be strengthened to facilitate the CRA integration into the ASDP? And last question is, what best practices from other regions or countries can be applied to enhance the CRA implementation in Cagayan Valley? This study aims to, number 1, analyze existing policies and programs supporting CRA in Cagayan Valley. Number 2, to identify barriers and enablers for CRA adoption among farmers and institutions. And then number 3, to evaluate institutional coordination and governance mechanisms for CRA integration into the ASDP. And number 4, to assess best practices and formulate recommendations for CRA implementation. This study is significant in both theoretical and practical context. Under theoretical contributions, advances research in climate adaptation planning and institutional governance for agricultural resilience. And for practical contributions, it provides policymakers and agricultural extension officers with strategic guidelines for CRA integration into development plans. Number 5 is the hypothesis or assumptions of this study. There are 2 hypotheses for the quantitative approach. Number 1 is, there is no significant relationship between existing agricultural policies and the adoption of CRA interventions. And hypothesis number 2 is, there is a significant relationship between institutional coordination and the effectiveness of CRA integration in the ASDP. And for the assumptions or for qualitative approach, number 1 is, policy gaps and weak institutional frameworks hinder CRA integration. And number 2, successful CRA implementation requires multi-stakeholder collaboration and knowledge dissemination. In the context of the research proposal, integrating climate resilient agriculture into the ASDP of Cagayan Valley, the review of literature serves several critical functions. Like establishing theoretical foundations, it provides a comprehensive understanding of existing theories and concepts. And then we can identify research gaps by analyzing current literature. We can pinpoint areas where research is lacking. And number three, information methodology. A thorough literature review offers insights into the methodologies employed in similar studies, enabling us to adapt appropriate research designs and methods for the investigation. Then we also avoid duplication by reviewing existing studies that ensure that this research contributes new knowledge to the field. And then contextualizing findings. It allows us to place the research within the broader academic discourse, demonstrating how the study aligns with or diverges from existing findings and theories. And also, it enhances the credibility of the research. A well-conducted lit review showcases our familiarity with the subject matter, lending credibility to the research proposal and highlighting its significance in the field. With this in mind, the literature review not only justifies the need for this study but also guides its direction and methodology, ensuring that the research is grounded in existing knowledge while contributing novel insights to the discipline. So the content of the literature review are: number one, the conceptual foundations and climate impacts on Cagayan Valley agriculture. There are 4 points: the climate resilient agriculture, an approach enhancing agricultural productivity and resilience while mitigating climate change impacts. Strategies include climate smart crop varieties, conservation agriculture, agroforestry, integrated water management, and improved weather forecasting tools. Number two, the sustainable livelihoods framework, as stated by Chambers and Conway, emphasizes the diversifying livelihood strategies, ensuring access to resources, and enhancing institutional support for adaptive capacity building. Number three, institutional theory by North highlights the role of governance structures in facilitating climate adaptation initiatives. And lastly, the climate impacts in Cagayan Valley. The increased temperatures, erratic rainfall, and extreme weather events like typhoons and droughts have led to reduced crop yields, soil degradation, and water scarcity, threatening food security and farmers' livelihood. And then there are also these policies, barriers, and best practices, like the existing policies and programs, the CRA Roadmap 2020 to 2030, the National Adaptation Plan by the Climate Change Commission, and also the local climate change action plans of the different local government units of Cagayan Valley, and the adaptation and mitigation initiatives in agriculture by the Department of Agriculture. And then the barriers for CRA adoption: limited financial support for smallholder farmers, knowledge and capacity gaps among farmers and extension officers, the weak institutional coordination and policy alignment, and market access and supply chain constraints. And under opportunities and best practices, community-based adaptation programs ensuring context-specific interventions, the agroforestry and conservation agriculture enhancing soil fertility and income diversification, improved water management systems like rainwater harvesting and drip irrigation and development, and distribution of climate-resilient seed varieties. These slides, the last two slides, provide a succinct overview of the literature, highlighting the theoretical frameworks, climate impacts, existing policies, barriers, and best practices relevant for integrating CRA into the ASDP of Cagayan Valley. This study is anchored on the Sustainable Livelihoods Framework and institutional theory, focusing on climate resilient agriculture interventions that can be systematically integrated into the ASDP in Cagayan Valley. The framework highlights the relationship between policy inputs, enabling factors at the farm level, the adoption of CRA strategies, and the resulting impacts on resilience and sustainable livelihoods. Key components of the framework: number one, the policy institutional inputs like the PDP, CRA roadmaps, etc., and then government structures and institutional coordination. And then number two is farmer-led enablers and barriers, the access to finance, extension services, and climate information, and the socioeconomic conditions and capacity to adopt the CRA. Number three, the CRA practices, the climate smart seed varieties, agroforestry and soil conservation, sustainable water management, climate advisory services. And number four, integration mechanism, the mainstreaming of the CRA strategies into the ASDPs, the strengthened institutional coordination, the policy coherence across sectors, and lastly, the outcomes, the enhanced agricultural resilience and productivity, sustainable rural livelihoods, and informed and climate adaptive planning. Data gathering methodologies employs the mixed methods approach for the qualitative, like the key informant interviews with policymakers, the DA officials, LGUs, and farmers' organization, the focus group discussions with farmer groups, and content analysis of policy documents. And for quantitative method, surveys with farmers to assess CRA adoption barriers and enabling factors, and secondary data analysis of agricultural production and resilience indicators. For data analysis, we will employ thematic coding for qualitative data, and then descriptive and inferential statistics like chi-square test, their correlation analysis for survey data, and policy gap analysis and SWOT analysis for institutional frameworks. To ensure that research questions are effectively answered using the conceptual framework, that each key component should be aligned with the specific assessment indicators, data sources, and methods. Here are the assessment strategies to assess each component. For policy and institutional inputs, the first question that is being answered is, what are the existing policies and programs supporting climate-resilient agriculture in Cagayan Valley? The indicators would be existence and comprehensiveness of policies of the PDP, the CRA roadmaps, the LCCAPs, the budget allocations, and presence of the CRA strategies in ASDP. Possible data sources would be policy documents, government reports, like the DARFO and the LGU plans. The method would be content analysis, KII with policymakers, and policy gap analysis. For farmer-led enablers, the research question alignment is, what are the key barriers and enablers for the adoption of CRA interventions among farmers and agricultural institutions? Indicators are the access to extension services, financing mechanism, technology use, education levels, land ownership. And possible data sources would be household surveys, farmers' FGDs, agricultural census data. The method would be the descriptive statistics, SWOT analysis, thematic coding for qualitative responses. And for CRA practices, the research question alignment is, what best practices and lessons can be drawn from other regions or countries in implementing CRA strategies? Indicators would be types of CRA practices adopted, like drought-resistant crops, rain harvesting, the adoption rates, the outcomes, the yield resilience. And data sources would be case studies, pilot project reports, and comparative literature. Methods would be comparative analysis, case study evaluation, and meta-synthesis of secondary data. And number four, integration mechanisms. The question that would be answered is, how can institutional coordination and governance mechanisms be strengthened to facilitate the CRA integration into the ASDPs? The indicators would be the presence of interagency working groups, alignment between local and national plans, and degree of stakeholder participation. The data sources would be the documents of the plans, the minutes of planning meetings, interviews with DA and LGU officials. The method would be the stakeholder analysis, institutional mapping, and policy coherence review. And finally, under outcomes, the research objective link is how to enhance agricultural resilience and sustainability through CRA integration. The indicators would be the improved yield stability, reduced climate vulnerability index, the farmer perception of resilience, and possible data sources would be baseline and monitoring data, resilience scoring tools, participatory assessment, and the methods to be employed will be the before and after analysis, impact assessment if there would be available historical data, and perception surveys. The background of the locale of the study would be the Cagayan Valley region, located in the northeastern part of Luzon Island that composes 5 provinces: Batanes, Cagayan, Isabela, Nueva Vizcaya, and Quirino. The region serves as a major rice and corn producer, making it highly susceptible to climate-related agricultural risks. Given its agricultural significance, strategic interventions in climate adaptation are crucial for food security and rural development. For my references, I have 16 sources and I will skim you through to 1 to 5 and then 6 to 10 and then 10 to 15 and then lastly the 16th. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope my research proposal contributes meaningfully to building a climate resilient future for Cagayan Valley and beyond. Mabuhay!